Okay, well, good evening and welcome everybody to the Woodley Town Council Leisure Services Committee meeting being held on Tuesday, the 3rd of September 2004. These Town Council meetings are now recorded live, with the recording being streamed on the Town Council's YouTube channel afterwards. By virtue of attending the meeting, you consent to having your image and your audio recorded for this purpose. So if you do not wish to do so for your image or audio be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. For those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill, so if you hear the fire alarm, please head to the nearest fire exit and congregate at fire assembly points by the open centre. Thank you very much. Okay, I will take item 1 of the agenda, which is apologies, Matthew.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Horskins, but Councillor Horskins is attending virtually.
Hello, Mr. Horskins, or Councillor Horskins. Excellent, thank you very much. I'll take item 2 there on the agenda, which is for the declarations of interest. Does anybody have anything they'd like to declare? Particularly, no? Okay, in that case, I will then move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of June 2004, and to approve the minutes of that meeting of the Leisure Services Committee. Have everyone had a chance to read them? Everyone happy? Or does that have any questions? Okay. In that case, can I have a show of hands for those who approve those minutes? Can I have any in do not approve them or any abstaining? Thank you. 30 minutes. Okay, I'll take item 4 on the agenda, which is to review the actions follow-ups arising from the previous meeting of the committee, which is on appendix 4, page 3. Matthew, do you want to go through those briefly?
Yeah, I think we normally kind of, it's been working quite well with councillors who've read it, provide us with any kind of questions they have on those. I think all the updates are pretty clear in there, so
I've got a couple of comments to make if that's all right.
Chairman,
Just on minute 7, to clarify something there, the weekend listening collection, what we've trialled is a seasonal one, so from May to September through the busiest season to see how that goes, and that's worked really well over this period, but it doesn't say that in a minute, so that's just a clarity. Excuse me, minute 34 in relation to Woodward Park, I did receive a response from the leader there, which stated it was in the hands of officers at Reading Borough Council. I have written again, this time to a different contact, which I was given by the leader, the Director of Property and Asset Management at Reading Borough Council, to request a definitive answer on the basis of that the council may seek to reconsider its position in respect of the lease, depending on that response. So that's moved on side. Okay.
Any other comments from those minutes and actions that are noted? No? Okay, in that case, I should go on to item 5, which is budgetary control, and to note the report on page 5. Kevin.
Thank you. No significant items to report particularly in there, other than to draw attention to on page 7, community hall income, which is looking very strong again this year, tracking the budget for income there. Everything else is pretty much where we'd expect it to be. Woodford Park Leisure Centre and 3G pitch are well over and good as well at this point.
Great. Is it extra football, stuff like that's been played, or?
I think they're included together, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Park and the 3G, but mainly it's just we've had a strong start to the year.
Strong use, yeah. Good. Okay. Very much. Okay, so I will then take item 6, which is the Woodford Park Centre Sports and Development Activities Report on page 7.
Evening, everybody.
Yes.
So member turnover, we've had a really strong few months actually, quite surprising and a bit out of character for the summer, where normally we would see a decrease in our total membership. We've actually seen an increase. So we had 98 new people join through the period 22nd of May until the 26th of August, and 69 leave. Normally I would expect that to be the other way around actually. So I'm quite pleased with that. As you can see, as always, we kind of struggle to get people to give us definitive reasons for why they've left. There's obviously a few more going to university that we would normally see at other parts of the year. Only one other person left moving from the gym, and that was because they liked swimming. So nothing too much to worry about there. The Flexi Classes programme, which we launched earlier this year, is still proving really popular. For those that aren't aware, we basically have 2 slots on our group exercise timetable that we allocate for Flexi Classes, and the basic idea is that those classes change throughout the year based on member feedback and kind of what people want to see run. Those classes have been really well attended, and we ran our second survey asking what people wanted to see over the summer, and that resulted in a class called Summer Blast, which is again just a generic class, but it's nice to have things themed around the seasons. And generally speaking, that's kept our timetable nice and fresh and kept people interested in it. And as we approach we'll look to do some kind of Halloween themed classes, and Christmas we'll do festive classes and so on. And it's just basically a simple way of keeping people interested in what we're doing. Something that's been really popular over the last few months is the new phone system we've introduced. We struggled for a very long time with our phones just because of high demand to book on for exercise classes and to hire badminton courts. So we've introduced and kind of been trialling a call queue system. It's very similar to when you ring the doctors and get the music. That's been really, really well received. Lots of members have reported they don't feel like they've been cut off as much as they were previously. And it tends to just be a little bit of a nicer experience rather than kind of just getting a beeping tone and get a little bit in the background. So that's been a really real positive over the summer. We've been going through some recruitment processes over the last couple of months, a couple of weeks, and we're still going through them now. We advertised for a full-time admin officer, basically to help with the increased demand of admin work we have at the moment, more bookings and more people coming to the building. One of the full-time duty managers that was already working with us ended up taking on that role, so we're now advertising for that role. That's currently live and I think ends on Sunday. Which ultimately means we're advertising for 2 full-time duty managers. My hope with that is that we'll be able to really make a big difference on how we go about maintaining the facility mostly. Those 2 duty managers will have a real big influence on us, our ability to keep it clean, keep things working properly, and generally going about making sure that everything's working as it should be. We had an IT overhaul, which isn't very exciting, but did make a big difference to us. It's allowed us to work in a completely different way. We're able to be much more analytical with some of the decisions we make, which has already proven really kind of beneficial in 2 particular circumstances. And the centre staff, of course, are really pleased with that because everything works quicker for them. The paddling pool, which I'm sure some of you have already seen as you've walked past it, has been incredibly popular this summer. We had a really strong start to the summer holidays, and it was absolutely rammed for pretty much 3 weeks straight. That did result in some damage, unfortunately. Luckily, the day that the damage was noticed, it actually rained. So we closed it on a day it rained. We then fixed it on a day it rained. Reopened it on a day where it was sunny again. So we got very lucky this year with it being closed. It always ends up being closed for a small period of time where we just need to refresh the water. Yeah, we were able to do that with minimal disruption this year. I've got a plan to close it this weekend, unless it looks like the next weekend's going to be particularly hot. At the moment, we've kind of just left it up in the air, but we'll communicate that to the public as and when we make that final decision. Another real positive over the summer was our family record set promotion. So this has run for a number of years now, and originally just started as something to kind of fill space where we basically allow families, I've got a sentence at the end of this paragraph here, we allow families playing with an under 18 to play badminton, tennis or table tennis for £1 each for the hour. It was originally just a way of just getting people to book and try badminton courts in the school holidays, but it's become incredibly popular to the point where now people are still, even though the summer holidays have ended, are still calling us now to try and book those slots. As you can see, we had an increase in the amount of bookings or people, however you want to look at it, that came in. So that number there in the table reflects the number of individual people that paid £1 to play those sports. Some of them, of course, are the same people, so they're not all different. That final number for the summer, because I had to record this just before it closed, was 1,426, so an increase of just under 400 people compared to the previous year. And of course, we'll carry on doing that. We'll do it for October half term, Christmas, and pretty much every school holiday we get. So I'm really pleased with how that's changed. One of the big things I've worked on over the summer is I've been trying to work with Woodley Cricket Club to resolve their issues regarding playing cricket at Woodford Park Leisure Centre on an ongoing basis. And we've had a few meetings and we finally were able to sit down in person towards mid-August. And the league has finally gone through their changes, which has placed increased demand on the cricket club. I won't go through the entire list of things the league needs the club to tick, but that includes things like umpire changing facilities, away team changing facilities, storage, showers, individual cubicle toilets, showers, and things that we just don't have on site. One of the big things was that the league requires the facility to be available until 8 o'clock, regardless of whether it's used. They need a commitment that the club will be able to fulfill the fixture, and at 8 o'clock there'll be a cut-off point regardless. To do that, we would have to open the building past 6, which we don't currently do on a Saturday, and the cost of that is roughly £2,500. The club have agreed to pay that through a series of fundraising activities that they're going to run throughout the year. They were really happy with that. The league seems to be happy with that, and the league are going to support them with their fundraising activities too. So it looks like they're going to get the green light from the league at the end of this month to play at Woodford Park for 2025.
That's good news.
Yes, it was well received by all. I think the club have got a few things they need to prove to the league as well, which is separate from us. So we're not involved in that process. We're supporting where we can, but ultimately some of the things are to do with their internal processes that we don't have any influence over. But it should mean that, as long as everything is ticked and crossed, that they'll be in the league and playing at Woodford Park next season. And then we'll address the following season after, depending what they want to do. But the club have got some big plans, and they would like to reintroduce a youth team. They would like to do more girls cricket, and they'd like to do more training in the week. It's just a case of how they get from where they are now to there, because the club took a real step backwards, I think, over the last kind of 3 or 4 years, particularly after COVID.
Yeah.
And they've struggled to get back to where they were.
Yeah.
So I've just left a note there saying that the league and the club will make their final decision on Monday, the 30th of September. So we're not involved in that process, of course, but we're just going to wait for them to say yes. But it sounds like it's going to be a yes.
Okay.
And just a final note there, I'm sure we'll talk about this more later. The redevelopment survey that we ran earlier this year closed on the 21st of June. We had 1,339 total responses, and I've just put in brackets there, 1,085 actually completed the full survey. I believe what that means is that people got halfway through and got bored and stopped filling in the survey. That was a really positive outcome there as well.
Any questions, Mike?
Yes, in a sense, this is a personal question, but I hope it can be applied to any member of the gym. Both my wife and I are members, but we haven't used the gym for some months, and I just wondered, would it be possible, given you've now got greater functionality on your IT system, that a member of staff could perhaps ring members who aren't using the gym or haven't used the gym for a long time, just a courtesy call, really? How are things? Everything okay? And just have a little conversation, just to make sure, because I see, you had 15 members not using the gym who cancelled their membership. So try and reduce that number. Just a contact might help.
So we actually used to do that when we first started, and what we found is it resulted in more people leaving the gym. So we stopped doing it because what that phone call did was prompt them then to cancel.
Okay.
So we've actually found that less contacts via emails and phone calls with members is better. What we do is, particularly for some members that we have particularly concerns over, is we can kind of see the trend in their attendance, and we will contact them separately, but that's more of a welfare check than an actual, do you still want to be a member, or when are you going to come next? Check. So we do that mainly based on our knowledge of them personally, though. So it's a bit separate, but yeah, that's the reason we don't follow up with anonymous. We actually have the functionality to do that anyway before the IT change. So
Question.
It's a good thought, I guess some people, you're always going to use a few people that just won't come anyway, and then there's always going to be an element of that, I think.
There's a huge range of usage. Some people come every day at the same time, relentlessly. You can almost, the time
They're very disciplined, aren't they?
And other people who come for 2 weeks non-stop and then won't come again for 6 months. So
Thank you, Chair. There was only a couple of questions. Do you suspend memberships?
Yeah. So if a member say has an injury,
Yep.
they can email in and they can request a suspension, and then we freeze all their payments until the time they want to come back. The one thing we do is we require a return date from them. That's just because otherwise, if suspensions are left open-ended, they tend to naturally become cancellations where people don't return after their period of suspension. That being said, they can change that return date again in the future. So if, for example, their injury is taking a bit longer to recover from than they originally thought, they can change it again.
Okay. Oh, gone on. Sorry.
No, that's right.
The nets on the 4G, any orders in? Are they going to be replaced?
Yes, they are. So we replace all of the nets every September. We wait for the summer holidays to end because they get hammered basically over the summer from the kids that obviously use the pitch.
Yeah.
So I've got all of them being replaced actually 2 weeks time, and the dividing curtains getting replaced as well in the middle.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's got Velcro in the middle this time,
Oh, good.
so you can stick it
Just stick it
together.
together and not have to worry. Cool. Thanks.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, and I will move on to item 7, which is parks and buildings.
Thank you very much. So just to note, the amenities team discovered an underground water leak at the leisure centre in the area to the front of the Octalis offices there, and we have got a contractor coming to fix that. That work's scheduled for the 10th of September, which is next Tuesday, to fix that. They've managed to turn that around quite quickly, which is good because it is losing quite a bit of water there, I believe. The Bowls Green, we've been receiving really positive feedback this year from the club regarding the condition of the green. That's following the installation of the new irrigation system and an entirely new regime on the ground itself, which we'll be continuing with, and that's worked really well. The comments were that it's been the best it's ever been. We've been helped a bit with weather and things as well, but actually the team have done a good job on there. We've got the right kit to do the job, so that's been really good. The sports pitches, goal mounds have been turfed rather than seeded, so levelled and turfed slightly differently to how it's been repaired in previous years, which has given us a better result, which should last longer through the season. Really pleased to have retained green flag again this year for Woodford Park. The feedback from the judging is here on page 12. The scoring remains high. It's getting a bit trickier, I would say, as we do improve things, and that's kind of the idea. So they start looking at things in a bit more detail as we go forwards and when we raise those standards. There was more emphasis on environmental elements and climate this year, which is something we're sort of expecting, and is something that obviously we're looking at over the next 12 months in the context of the other work that we're doing on climate emergency. And it'll be interesting to see how that fits in with the climate footprint work that's happening as well. So really pleased with that, and that whole function of green flag is working really well and giving us useful feedback and things we can actually achieve during the year-on-year improvement. I'm really pleased with how that's working and developing. We have installed drop bollards at the vehicle entrances to the park to prevent unauthorised encampments. There have been a number in the area so far this year, thankfully none on town council land. Obviously, members remember last year where we weren't so lucky and getting access on 2 occasions into Woodford Park. The Orchard Garden, which is the proposal for the space to the rear of Coronation Hall. The creation of the garden will now take place in spring rather than autumn as originally planned. That's been due to staff capacity within the amenities team. It does, however, provide us with an opportunity, particularly for the new member in that team, to be really involved in the project. We've got a new recruit in the grounds team who's got some really good experience in that area and is keen to be involved. So we're going to use it as an opportunity to develop that member of staff as well. The play area, been waiting a little while for a repair to the rotating swing unit, which is kind of the first bit of kit on the right as you walk down. Would normally have kids flying around on it at some speed. That's awaiting a warranty repair, and the manufacturer's replacing the whole mechanism with a redesigned unit. It was a new bit of kit for them, and actually it developed a flaw due to heavy usage. They've redesigned the bearings mechanism, I believe, and that will be replaced soon. Moving on to allotments, there's some more information about allotments later on, but currently 82 tenants on the waiting list. We are whipping our way through them, and our admin officer spends quite a bit of time going through those and re-going through to make sure that people on that list do actually want to plot, and they're not just kind of sat there for long periods of time as with the list getting bigger. And the inspection process is working well now with the allotment tenants committee. There's quite a lot to work through, but the process is working well. Work on the roadways has started. We had some issues with the materials, and we did have some complaints in relation to the surfacing on roads A and B, which is being rectified. It was basically the size of some of the material, which didn't give a particularly smooth finish. That is being redone, and that work will be completed within the next 2 weeks. And the new composting toilet has been installed, not operational yet, but it'll be operational within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Yes, it's on the allotments. At the moment, the roadworks really made a difference, first of all. Thought they were going to be a bit rough with my bike, but as you come in on the entrance road, there's a big pile of turfs, I suppose you call it, mounds of mud and grass. Obviously, it's been cleared, raked off from somewhere and put there right by the pond. And the problem then is that the people on the first row, that's where they normally park. And it does cause an issue of people trying to get past. So I don't know what they're there for and whether or not they're going to be moved. And the second question was, where's the new composting toilet?
Right, the new toilet is over towards the back, so M row.
So I'm still closest to the other ones.
Yeah, you probably are. Yeah.
Important things you need to know.
I will investigate regarding the materials near the gate.
Any other questions? Councillors, okay. Then we will move on to item 8, which is community youth partnership, to note the report on page 17. Does any councillor have anything they'd like to ask? No, in that case, then we will note that report and move on to item 9, which is the development task and finish working group for the Woodford Park. To note the report on page 19, and then summary comments that were made by me through pages on page 28, summarised on the agenda here. Kevin, any comments you'd like to make on that particularly?
Matt, do you want to have summarising the report there? And then I think
yes, I mean, I think obviously, so I think the important thing to understand, I think, is the history of the group. That, you know, there's been a lot of work earlier on in the year with the members on that group working with Ed to go around the centre and look and see what on the ground needs to be improved at the state of the centre. Less action for the group over the last sort of 5 months until the last meeting, as we were waiting for the results of the survey. And Ed suggested in his report, we have over 1,300 responses to the survey, of which well over 1,000 were fully completed, which is excellent. We provided to the working group a report of those survey results on page 23. And it's important to note that if we could do everything on this report, it shows a lot of things in there that a lot of people would like. We could achieve everything we would, but the purpose of the survey was really to highlight the facilities and the activities that can take place at the leisure centre, where if we put the investment into the most popular, we will get most return. That was the real key of this to understand. And that has really fed back into the comments that were made by the working group and ultimately the recommendations that have been put out on page 22 about how we should proceed with it. So if you look on page 22, the first recommendation highlights really the ultimate position of the working group, which is that we should now proceed to contact and engage with an appropriate architect to design and create a formal proposal for the redevelopment of the leisure centre. And from the survey and the discussions, that should focus on the inclusion of a cafe, dedicated exercise studio space, a soft play area and splash pad, with additional focus on making spaces multi-use where possible and ensuring parking capacity is taken into consideration. Following that, Ed has done an excellent piece of work on, which is the report that he has provided on page 29, Appendix 9A, which summarises all of the work of the group, summarises the focus that we need to have on the development, as well as some initial potential design plans that we'll be able to feed into an architect and say these are things that we're looking at. Does anyone have any questions on those works, things?
Mike?
Well, I mean, just to say, this is a phenomenal report.
It is.
So congratulations on this piece of work. I was very, very impressed. The only question I've got for you is the juxtaposition of the cafe in relation to the paddling pool. I thought maybe it would be better, but you can tell me otherwise, if the cafe was, as you approach the gym, it's to the left-hand side. I thought that was going to be the plan. You've got an exercise studio there, and I can understand that. And you want to link the cafe with the soft play area, which that has a lot of benefits as well. So can you just explain the justifications to why it's there rather than?
Yeah, to be honest, I told with that a lot, and I had multiple designs originally where I went through and I, tried to almost piece it all together a bit like a jigsaw. The reason I ended up putting it at the back was partly because it links to the soft play, and that obviously guarantees a certain level of ongoing income for the cafe, but also because I think the importance of 3G pitch and the outside sports at the back of the facility should be understated. So, for example, with the Berkshire Youth Football League on a Saturday morning, where you have thousands of children come and play football, the cafe would be at the back of the building. And I think ultimately people would still use it, even if they couldn't see it from the packing pool, where we could potentially look to bring in some form of outdoor hut or shack to provide ice cream, basically. That's why I put it there. There's also an element of, if you put it at the front, you'd have to knock down part of the facility, and then that would disrupt the use for exercise classes. Whereas if you build the studio in the free space, you could move everyone over before disrupting. And that was one of the things that we picked up in the last meeting that we wanted to try and avoid where we could, was disruption to current users. So that's why ultimately an architect will tell us what is and isn't possible anyway. I'm not an architect. This is kind of my ideal, I suppose, in terms of what I'm thinking about. Operationally, I guess, I suppose, but the architect won't think about that. They'll think about what's best anyway. So they may turn around and say, actually, no, this is not what's best. You should do it this way. And I'm kind of open-minded, I guess, but this is what I would do.
I think it's important, Chairman, that the operational side of the centre is given paramount importance. Otherwise, you'll get an architect telling you, you need to build it this way, and you'll end up with a car park. This, I think, should be if we agree, this should be the blueprint which goes on to the working party.
I think it informs them. I think it definitely informs them about that practical aspect. I think the architect will come up with other suggestions, which maybe we haven't thought about, that might make it more practical given their experience in designing similar facilities and so forth. So one of the things that came out of the report, which you can see it here, is the position of the female, male and disabled toilets in relation to the new changing rooms. Should they be more integrated? Because normally when you go into these sports centres now, you know, the toilets are part of the changing room. They're all integrated, and that in this particular sense, for example, cafes, as Mike say, they can normally be at the front with a reception. So basically people walk straight into the cafe, they have their cup of tea, and then maybe they go off to their class or do something like that. Whereas at the moment you've got this barrier with all these toilets, so they may very well come up with other suggestions. I think that's a healthy thing. But this actually makes a lot of sense to me. So I think there'll be situations where, for example, depending on what it impacts, it may be more expensive, less expensive to do that change, depending on what the impacts the revenue might be, depending on what the cost of the change will be. So there's a little bit of that to sort of take into consideration when we get right into the detail, I think.
Exactly.
Just to finish on one of the things Ed said, I think the important thing in terms of sort of this provisional design is that we're looking at it from a point of view of trying to have phased building works so that we can get an area for an exercise studio built at the front of the sports hall, ideally without any disruption to the rest of the centre before going on, and we can move people from the rest of the centre and move on with the rest. And the importance for us is if there's any major disruption to the centre for any period of time, there's the potential to lose membership. And then when the leisure centre's finished, we would have to then rework to build that up again. So we want to do everything we possibly can in terms of the phasing of the works, to ensure there is minimal to no disruption to people using that centre. They can still use it as they do now. That will be complicated, that might add cost, but I think from our point of view, long term, it's a really important thing to ensure that our existing users are not impacted.
Carol.
Yes, I would agree with this report. It's what you said. It's very good, very clear. The cafe was one of the ones that concerned me as well. That we're talking about its visibility from outside, but if you look, you can't get into it from the back. You've got to walk all the way round, which I think might put people off. But the thought was as to whether there could be some, maybe not access to the cafe, but a window or a serving hatch or something similar, so that it is opened up to the back. They don't necessarily have to come in and sit down, but they could grab a cup of tea.
I think it's important because at the moment, that back part of the building is what used to be the old cricket pavilion, and they had a patio there, which I've no doubt in years past was very popularly used. And as we're trying to support the cricket anyway, and continue at Woodley, I've no doubt we'll think about things like that in the final design phase.
So that was one thing. And the other one was that the changing facilities now are just for the exercise studio / gym, I think. There's no changing facilities for the sports pitches.
Exactly, and just to address the first concern of yours, I just haven't put the doors on the external walls, so there would be an area, potentially even an outdoor area. That's just a rough kind of blueprint. Assuming it is possible, of course, we would have external doors to allow people to come in. I think I made a note in the report at some point where I think that there's a potential to appeal to dog walkers. And of course, they would walk around the back of the building and then could stop off. So we definitely would do that. And yes, so this design removes the sports changing rooms in their entirety. That's partly because they are heavily underused. They're not really required. But ultimately, a big part of this is also about improving the other changing rooms. So we would just have changing rooms for use by everybody, and that would be from a variety of gym users, sports users, and also for the grass sport users as well. So everybody would be welcome in the changing rooms.
Because again, as you say, it is just a design and not an outline, if you like. Yeah. But if you've got footballers that want to change with their football boots, etc., they're going to come in around the front. There's no access, whereas before, you keep the mucky lot up the back to those changing rooms. So, but if they're not being used, then that's not an issue.
Yeah, they are. I think the survey reflects that quite heavily, and that they are the grass sport is kind of the lowest usage. And also when we did our walk arounds, that was the main area that was picked up as the bit that needed the most work.
Okay.
That's the way the cricket,
Sorry, Danny.
but where the cricket has changed.
In the same changing rooms.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, from my meeting with the cricket club, as long as they have changing rooms and access to changing rooms, it doesn't matter.
That's the main thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? Danny.
Thanks, Joe. I can't go with everybody, but the report is very in detail. I was looking for if there's a mobile app, and I saw that for the future consideration there will be, because it's a lot easier to access the mobile booking and everything. I do like the cafe idea, because I do go to take my son to the football, and there's nowhere to sit down for the parents, so this would be a perfect view. Of course, the architect would probably propose something else, but I do like that. Especially the view from the back. At the moment, it looks like pretty much blunt to the side, so it will be all around.
Yeah.
Like the idea, but one question I had about the gym, because the proportion of the members who responded is quite big in terms of gym users, but the gym size is the same.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what will be what's the decision on that. Is it going to be more equipment, because gym membership is quite significant numbers. So I thought you might consider new equipment.
Yeah, it was one of my other designs involved moving the gym to the back of the building and putting the cafe at the front where the gym is. Ultimately, again, you're looking at a lot of disruption, and that's why I avoided that. But also, I think that a large portion of the gym members are there for the exercise classes. So that exercise studio can cater for them, and we can put more classes on at peak times to basically lower the pressure on the gym during those times. So I think the gym membership would increase, and we wouldn't have a problem from that. Long term, I think it's definitely something we can consider, but we're probably talking 10 to 20 years in relation to that. And if we really want to, we can also cap membership. So we can put a stop on the members if we feel like we've reached a capacity. I have considered doing that before, and then COVID came along, so we didn't. But yeah, it was increasing the size of the gym was probably the one thing from the report that I didn't act on. But I feel like the exercise studio would tick that box.
I would just follow up on that as well. We're going to need an architect to tell us financially what the best option is for us. There is scope within this as a provisional design to build a 2-story structure at the front where the exercise studio is, and have another gym, say, at the top. That is an option if we look at the space of the gym, and actually an architect comes in and says, if you're going to be knocking down the back half of the building, it makes sense to knock down other areas as well. So there is scope of that. It depends on that overall cost. As Ed said, the demand there is in the exercise studio space, not so much from the gym. But I think we will be still holding that while we're kind of into those architect phases to see if there are any options. Because if we can get more space in that centre, and afford it, then I think we'll do it. We want to keep our minds open at this point anyway.
I think so. We should look, 10, 15, 20 years ahead, making sure that what we've got is going to be fit for 20 years' time. Because these opportunities to spend this sort of money and make these sort of changes only come once in a lifetime, I think, to be honest with you. And it's like Optalis there, they're taking up some prime position there.
Yep.
And obviously we have to be sensitive to their needs, but we should consider how we can accommodate them maybe in a new area if we wanted to use that for something else. And that might be an option, I don't know.
That was another thing I considered, in that the obvious idea would be to remove, as brutal as it sounds, Optalis and extend the gym backwards. And I did even consider how potentially we could do that while choosing other council facilities to re-accommodate them. But that's probably part of a bigger discussion, and
Yes,
we have to involve them. So for now, I've kind of left that as it is and haven't moved that. So
They expressed any input into this design?
no, not at all. They did the survey.
They did the survey.
They
know it's there.
Yeah, but they like the site, and obviously, I think if they were to see this, they'd probably be quite excited about it, because there'd be a cafe on site and potentially other things they could do as well. So they like it, and that's why I've left them on. I didn't want to interfere with that and kind of make a decision on that on my own. It seems a bit cold, I suppose.
No, I know. I just think, all these things, people get a little bit sensitive if they're not kept involved. And they're such a great tenant for us. I would have thought that, as we get into this, we should be mindful of them and their input, actually.
Any plans for lockers?
So we have lockers in the men and female changing already.
Okay.
We have lockers in the gym.
Okay.
So they're all the same. They're the foot pound in, get a pound back kind of lockers.
It's a money-making machine, no?
Well,
People forget.
yeah, well, you say
That's what I
that.
was asking.
You say that, but when they forget them, they block up and then someone puts another one in and I always have to fix them. So, yeah, no, so we have lockers in both change rooms and the gym already. And I didn't have any plans to put any others in, but I probably would do in the soft play area actually, but that's a completely.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the initial? In terms, I only got one actually, in terms of sort of numbers and usage, we got any idea, have we got any, done any sort of modelling to think what we might be, given that we've got quite good numbers now over the last 5 and 10 years in terms of growth and what's happening? We got any projections for the next sort of 10, 15 years? We might be able to give the architects
No, nothing, no.
growth and size and stuff like that.
No, we don't have anything like that. No.
Do you not?
No.
Okay, I need to guess we could share what we have got in terms of actual attendance and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to have. I've looked into it a little bit. Something on the front doors that measures how many people come in. It actually can track how many people come in through a day. I thought that might be quite interesting. Especially with like a day with the paddling pool to see how many people just walk in the front door. Of course, you wouldn't know what they're there for, but
No, it gives you some idea of football though, doesn't it? Yeah. And we could do that actually.
I think you can
It's
rent.
not expensive.
You can rent the kit. I think
You can rent it or you can install it. It's not big bucks actually. You might investigate that actually and see how much it is.
That's just
Yes.
prompted me to think of something else. I
Yes.
suspect the Strategy and Resources Committee would probably want to see a costed business plan case for the cafe and the soft play and indoor water areas. The projection for income expectation over the next 5, 10 years will have an impact.
It will have an impact. This is why I was asking the question, because very often when I'm reviewing things like this, it's like, well, what's the thought about, we don't want to go wild with our forecasts, but if things were to be continued roughly the way they are, avoiding COVID and any other calamity, what sort of reasonable growth could we expect, and how might that impact revenue and stuff like that? So there might be something that Kevin or Matthew might be able to help you with in terms of like putting some modelling together. It may not be required right away now, but I think you should start thinking about it. So, because that will be a question, I'm sure, as it gets to leisure services, and also back to strategy and resources, I think. One of the things that we will certainly be asking the architect for, I think, is a budget. Okay, not just a belt budget, but that's doing it includes fees and all the other bits, so there's no hidden surprises in there. So if we've got something that we know roughly is fairly costly per square metre, square. Good. All right then. Any other questions? What are you thinking? Waving hand?
No.
Right.
It seems like a really good piece of work. And
Thanks, excellent. And I think we should make a note actually. So thanks to Ed for doing a perfect job.
Just one thing, if I
Yes,
don't lovely. As we are thinking about next 10, 15, 20 years, or maybe over that period, is there any chance we can still also consider like a future plan after 15 years to have a swimming pool in this area?
it was something that did pop up occasionally in the additional comments on the survey. Not as much as I thought it would actually, but the costs of running a swimming pool and building a swimming pool are significant. So that would be, I actually think probably putting a pool in would probably cost more than all of this combined, just off my very limited knowledge of it. So it could be considered, but I don't know where you put it, if I'm honest. You probably have to put it in the middle of the field. That's when people would like that.
Yeah, I think you got to think it's. I know where you're coming from, Danny. It's Woodley's probably got about the newest pool around here actually, because Reading have got, I think they have everything, and Wokingham, they got a pool still.
Wokingham's pool is new in the last few years.
Yes.
Bournemouth is fairly new.
Bournemouth is new, isn't it?
Palmer, did they have a swimming pool?
There
are quite a few pools
there are a
that
few around,
service the
aren't
area.
there?
Well, Bournemouth is overbooked most of the time. So
Yeah.
all my kids goes, and then it's like it's pretty much like a gym subscription really. So you have to pay the equivalent amount, actually more than gym membership. So kids always have throughout this season or throughout the year, they will happen. I'm not sure of the numbers, what actually generates the revenue, but
That's funny, isn't it? Because you know, when I think back to when I was a boy, many years ago, my local school had a 25-metre pool. All the kids used to go through it there and learn how to swim and stuff like that. And of course, we're very lucky to have our paddling pool and so forth. But you know,
Just make it deeper.
do we have something like? Do we think about having something like that, which might, and then think about maybe water polo, water basketball, and that sort of thing? Would that be worth having?
I think if you look at the leisure centre as it is in the footprint, there is not the space.
There isn't really the
Unless
space.
you were to say knock down the sports hall and replace badminton, which is a big winner for us in terms of, in fact, the sports hall is the biggest. It is the biggest income, isn't it? Yeah. Replace that with a swimming pool, and there are swimming pools in the area. Then you're talking about a completely different cost. You're talking about lifeguards. It's a very, very expensive and costly leisure provision to provide. And actually, we've got a different offering up there. We've got a different clientele that come up there, and it's a nice family area. And I think it would be too big a change for us to go, let's completely change what's up there and provide that swimming pool element. I think we did look early on and kind of consider whether it is, but I think it's too much out of the way for us to deal with it.
yeah. This is all.
Can I move then that we accept the recommendation?
Yes.
1, 2, 3 and B as well on the report?
All councillors who would like to know and accept that report, please raise their hands. To the contrary, those abstaining. It's passed. Thank you very much.
Does this have to go to the planning committee as well? Not.
No, what happens now is this next steps, Kevin.
So that tasked officers with going away, engaging with an architect and drawing up some plans. In the first instance, that will come back to this committee, which is still involved. It may be a continuation of the working party that was involved in that to take on that next step might be part of that, and then ultimately through strategy and resources for funding, and then from there. So that, I think, looking at it, that step-by-step approach is going to be key to this, and that's what's really helped us get to this stage, because that was a really daunting prospect to look at that, and that task and finish group did a really good job of putting that stuff.
We really didn't have a lot of information. We've managed to get so much input. It's been tremendous, really, to be honest. And the next one I wanted to talk about is item B on item 9, which is should the end of the task finish coming on from what Kevin was saying, be extended to the appointment of councillors for the vacant labour group position on this work. Hang on a second, should the end of the task group be extended? That's one question. And the next question, members are on.
Simply the Labour group indicated because they left their place vacant after full council. Councillor Edwards would be nominated to their vacant position on the working group. But obviously, until that approval has happened, we didn't know the working group was going to extend it beyond tomorrow. So now it's been extended. It's simply to note that Councillor Edwards will be filling that vacancy.
We're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, then I'll go on to item 10, which is to consider the allotment-based management report on page 43. Which one are we doing?
That's me.
That'll be Kevin.
Thank you. So just for some background, a decision was taken by this committee at tail end of last year to prohibit bulk fire aside from January 2025. As due to an action in the climate emergency action plan to do so from a carbon reduction perspective. A year's notice was given under the terms of the Allotment Act. We provide a year's notice of changes to the tenancy agreement, and that's given us an opportunity for consultation with tenants and the tenants committee. We carried out an online survey which went out to all tenants. We got 174 responses back, which was actually quite surprising. That's about half the number, which is really, really good. And they were very helpful responses, not just in the obviously answering in the set question, the yes and no questions, but actually there were a lot of useful comments that came back from that as well. What the responses showed was that tenants who have bonfires at the site are generally burning other materials in addition to non-compostable green waste, and that's not entirely surprising, as we're aware that there's an issue with waste at the site, which often results in the amenities team cutting items and waste away from plots before they re-let. So I think the issue there is as much one of nuisance to residents and of air pollution through burning. So it's kind of a wider waste issue than what was being looked at perhaps initially, which was the carbon impact of burning green waste, which could be got rid of another way. Around 70% of the respondents did not support the decision to prohibit bonfires completely, although from the comments there's I think there's an appreciation to be gleaned from that tenants understand there needs to be some regulation around it, albeit that many felt that the current restrictions are adequate in dealing with that from a nuisance perspective. So there are a number of differing views on the specific carbon release implications of burning green waste, and the survey suggests that the waste issue would not be solved by encouraging more composting alone. It's not just a green waste issue, this is an issue about waste at the allotment site, which we need to deal with, and there won't be one solution to that. There'll be a number of actions, I suspect, in order to do that. Through our discussions with the Tenants Committee, it was suggested that the implementation of that clause to outright prohibit bonfires be delayed to enable a further assessment and some consideration of other solutions on the wider waste situation at the site. From those conversations, some of those actions might be we can better address waste coming onto the site and then being removed through the plot inspection process, better information to tenants about what they cannot bring on, and working that. It might be that we can review the skip provision that's provided at the allotments. It's a very difficult one to manage because you've got a range of people. Some will always obey the rules. Some will see a skip and think, great, I'll empty the garage and bring that down as well. So there are a lot of challenges there. We'll be talking to some other sites as well. Some places will have a deposit which will be held, and then at the end of the tenancy, if the plot's not cleared appropriately, then there's a forfeit, which there isn't at the moment, although it says in the tenancy agreement that the council reserves the right to make a charge for it. That's very, very difficult when somebody has gone their way and it's a small charge. So the recommendation there is to delay the implementation of that clause by reverting to the previous clause. What did happen during that period was that we had relatively limited contact and engagement with the Tenants Committee through that period. They were having some issues with internal ones with personnel and how it was working. That is very different at the moment, which is very positive. So we're meeting regularly with them, and they're getting messages out to tenants. So I think we've got a better opportunity to bring tenants along with us in making a decision which impacts all of them. If we can delay that perhaps and do that bit of work through this year. That might involve some more consultation through surveys with tenants. I'm really pleased with how that's worked. We've now got a process for doing that, which is better established through doing work with the leisure centre and through this to engage with people better than we ever have. So I think what it's done is, rather than got everyone to back up straight away, we've actually got a dialogue and some
yeah, but at the end of the day, you've got to take these people with you where the final solution is. I think that's really important. So I'm glad you've got that dialogue going. Actually, that's quite important for the final outcome. And in my mind, I sort of think to myself, there can only be about 3 or 4 different types of waste stream on this particular type of site. And it's a question of how do you deal with each one of them and what's the best way of doing that. I sort of think to myself, you know, if we want to give alternatives to bonfires, then that's what we need to look at. But I'm open to suggestions about how we approach that, you know, whether we go for more consultation with tenants, whether we also bring in some like outside help, I think, to provide us with some ideas in terms of, like, you know, we have the model of allotment site, how do we manage waste on it?
Yeah, I think key to it is picking those things up through the allotment inspection process, because we have got people there who are on the ground looking at individual plots, which gives us an opportunity to address those things directly with tenants. And you're right, I think that there is a danger of just a mass amount of fly tipping if that came in kind of overnight. All that rubbish is going to be up like a gate, basically. We're going to be spending quite a lot of money removing that anyway.
Yeah, we want to manage how it's
We wanna
disposed
manage
of.
that
Yeah,
rather
exactly. Yeah.
rather than have it kind of foisted upon us in that sense, because I think that the waste issue won't go away.
No, not at all. Then just move somewhere else. Yeah. What would you like to do next?
So the recommendation is to revert to the previous seasonal restrictions at this point, and not to implement that clause from January 2025, pending some more work on that issue to tackle waste.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I did read that with great interest, despite the fact some of it's quite small to try and read this actually.
So the comments,
Yeah, I was really excited.
I didn't do it soon. I waited a bit before I read that. But sort of coming from those responses, I'm just sort of wondering, and sort of several of them made comments that when they move on to a plot, I'm just really wondering what help is provided to newer allotment holders to clear plots, because some of them will make what previous tenants have left all sorts of mess. And
that is very much part of the problem. As it stands at the moment, we do what we can. The communities team do what they can, but on some occasions there's been skipfuls of stuff, which is hundreds of pounds worth of waste to be removed from a plot that someone might have had for years, and it's just left everything on there. You get window frames, bits of bicycles, all sorts of things. Those are the things that over a period of time we can get on top of better through the plot inspection process, because we're picking up as we go and letting people know they need to get the items removed. Ultimately, if a plot's terminated, it can be terminated for that reason. We need a better mechanism for dealing with that, because at the moment it's whether the amenities team has the time to do it, to physically go and remove that waste, and obviously whether we've got budget to.
Well, what about charging for it? Do we? If it's really excessive.
So some, as I said, some sites will charge a deposit at the outset. So you take on the tenancy, £200 or whatever it is, as a holding deposit, so that if you don't do that when you vacate the plot, you don't get it back. If you do, then you get the deposit back. So I'm not saying that's what we would do, but some sites do operate a system around that. It's very difficult to chase a resident who's then left the site for and bill them for that, and then follow it through a small claims court. Something might be a relatively small.
Yeah, it might be a bit. Yeah.
So that's always been.
Does it happen that often though?
Yeah, it does. Actually.
More often than you think.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the flip side of having a more successful allotment inspection process in turning over plots, where identifying ones that are a problem and picking them up and then terminating tenancies. But you've got a problem then.
That's good to clear the waste of the day. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's, it is an issue which needs it.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? So the waste that's collected in the skips that we have at the moment, is that taken away or composting to the recycling centre, or
So
is it just?
It's not green waste. So the skips the council provide are not for green
they're
waste.
not for green waste.
They're for other items. There's something that can't go in there: tyres, asbestos, things like other items, because it just accumulates through the year. So historically, we've had 2 8-yard skips once a year that go in and get filled up relatively quickly. And the tenants committee man them. So they're lockable skips, so they're managed in terms of the waste that goes in, but the council is already incurring quite an expense in managing the site.
So there's 2 types of waste really. You've got your green waste, which could, what's happening to that at the moment? It's being burnt, is it? Or?
So a real mix. Some people do take it away, and some are burning it, some composting it on site. So there's a mix.
I was just wondering if it could not be part of the brown bag scheme, where like the householders put the green waste, it gets taken away.
There's some option. I did talk to Wokingham about it. They don't have a facility for that to happen, or to help us to do that at the moment. So that would be a different thing. But there is more work that I think can be done about removing green waste and composting on the site, whether that's communal composting areas, more information for newer tenants perhaps coming in on how best to do that, because there are some tenants who never burn anything and that works very well for them. And there are others that always have and would, find that more difficult to do.
Yeah, because the ones that are doing it really well are probably the ones that should be lead by example and pass on how they do it, rather than just like pop it on a fire.
Well, you can compost all my green waste, but you can't put in the compost the nasty weeds. So I take those home, put them in my ground bin.
Yeah.
Don't burn anything because I'm a bit scared of setting light to my shed.
I mean, you see, what I do is when I cut everything down, I do my green waste. A lot of the big stuff that I cut down, I shred, and then I rot it down, and that goes back on the beds the following year.
Exactly.
That might be a bit old fashioned, but it actually works really well. But I don't know if a lot of people know that.
I think that's standard practice.
Is it standard practice? Okay, that's good to hear.
So I think there are two things, you're right. There's the issue of green waste and how we can better educate tenants and then bring them along with us in relation to that. And there's the other issue of general waste on the site, which we need to tackle from a number of angles.
Yes,
Just one more actually. It's just that several responses made reference to burnt ash, and they're making use of it. Oh, I don't know. I mean, I remember my days, my dad, when he had allotments and everything else, he used to always then dig it back in because of, I think, nitrogen in it or whatever. I'm wondering what use is sort of made of that, if anything, or encouraged, or perhaps any advice is given on that.
Again, I think different people do it different ways. And I think that the material that's produced after burning probably depends what you burned in the first place.
That's true, yeah.
Stuff that shouldn't have been on there or something, maybe you don't need that. But yeah, that is part of it. I think that's part of looking at what's being done really well on the site and trying to encourage that through.
Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 have made reference, I think, to that. So yes, if it's that, then you can understand it, but I don't think they'd be burning plastic or that sort of thing. So.
I've looked at, in years past, when I've looked at managing this sort of thing elsewhere, it was years ago, we looked at smokeless incineration, which was actually quite good. That was quite a good thing. Sort of like the shredding, the composting, even, down to the fact you can make, logs out of it, stuff like that, or partner with other people to do something like that. So there are other ideas to be had. I think we just need a bit of extra consultation.
And I think
so that's some good advice. Maybe Ready University.
There's some good suggestions in there as well about, and some of the sites do, where they have perhaps a larger communal composting area, which can be managed in a slightly different way.
That's right. Yeah.
And that can work on other sites. And there are a number of sites locally that don't allow bonfires and never have.
But people still manage to cope with it,
And we've got a slightly different situation because it's not necessarily like the fire. We've got a very large site and we've got a number of tenants who've had some of them for 40 years. Those habits are harder to change, and we can bring those people along with us.
Okay.
As the councillor who proposed this proposal to ban bonfires, I just want to express my disappointment. But I understand the discussion we've had tonight, and it is with reluctance that I think I would accept the recommendation, but albeit I am disappointed.
Yeah, I think we've all been disappointed actually, but on the positive side, I think the consultation has gone extremely well so far, and I think it promises to hopefully come up with some good solutions. It may not be as quick as you had thought it would happen by, but I think it's and things like climate emergency and stuff like that, we really do need to start tackling these sorts of things. To be seen doing it. So is there a recommendation that we have to vote on?
There is, yes.
What page number is that?
Just go to the page. Yeah.
45, so let me just. Okay, so members note the content of the report. The clause for the tenancy agreement related to bonfires revert to previously restrictions to enable further consultation and planning to manage waste at the site to continue. Can I have a show of hands, please, to approve that? Red lights, so relevance that, yes.
74.
Those against,
Um,
those abstaining? No. Thank you very much, councillors. Okay, we'll move on to item 11 then, which is to note the updated report from our friends of Woodford Park. Does any councillor have any comments on that? There was an interesting comment, if anyone had a chance to read it.
I think we should do more than just note it, Chairman. I think, you know, there is some comments here that we should, you know, acknowledge, you know, particularly the last one, the Hallow bench. You know, this is the volunteers who have installed this bench. All of a sudden it appears to become the Hallow bench.
Just for some clarity, the volunteers didn't install the bench, it was a council installed bench. The wording in the report there is slightly misleading.
So I didn't think it was installed, I thought it was the town council installed that, so.
We did discuss it in the meeting with the Friends group.
Did they sort of explain why they had particular?
It was around the fact that they felt that seat was used quite a lot, and that in designating it as a hello bench would deter people from sitting on it, was the position, which I don't particularly agree with. But in the context of the conversation I had around that, we agreed through my conversation with the lady who was driving that initiative. She didn't want there to be any negativity around it, so I opted to look at some different alternative seats in the park, which will work just as well. So we've got a different one.
All right, so you managed to accommodate that elsewhere then?
Yeah.
Fine. I think that's a good solution. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments? Okay. I'll go on to the next agenda item, which is to note item 12 for future agenda items. Does anyone have any suggestions?
I've got a suggestion, Chairman, which in view of the ongoing discussions with Reading Borough Council on Weevil Park, I wondered if the officers could identify whether there are any other amenity areas within Woodford that aren't owned by the town council that are owned by other local authorities or housing associations. But maybe the town council would like to. I'm thinking of the one on Drover's Way. Every time I drive past it, I think, what an absolute eyesore this is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And wouldn't it be better if the town council managed this? And I mean, if that's the only one, then okay. But if there are 3 or 4 or 5,
There are quite a few spots, especially in North Woodley, I think.
Is this something that the council want to take on? It'd be a cost to the council, clearly.
There have been areas that have come our way for discussion previously. They've tended to be fairly unattractive areas that would be of no benefit. There was a little funny corner parcel of land over next to Bournemouth open space, which was I think offered because it's where everyone chucks rubbish over the fence, and there was a real issue for Wokingham to manage. And the council did consider that, rejected it. So there have been a couple of those historically. There was one play area as well, which we were keen to take over, which was the Morrison Close quite some years ago, but then there ended up being an issue with ownership. And how that was entangled with the developer, so that never happened either. But we were set to take that play area as well, for similar reasons. But Woking have since retained it and replaced all the play equipment. I think there's a bit of a principle there about what this council wants to do with those areas, and obviously we have done that in the past with Malone Park, which we have a lease agreement, and Weevil Park, which we still currently do. There are larger parcels of land that fall within our patch, so to speak, but we haven't actively sought to take on more land in the past, and those offers have invariably come with no financial assistance in doing so.
If I'm just
I
a
think
sole
it's-
batter, I'll back
I
down,
think
but
it's one of those things, as Kevin said in the past, we've sort of like not resisted, but we've sort of taken a more cautious view of doing things like that, mainly because of the costs of the council. As long as, because the costs can be quite high, and it's a lot of maintenance and upkeep to be considered. I do think it would be useful to understand the extent of those areas that fall within our patch, but we currently own or have any responsibility for. Mainly just to see if there are any advantages to taking on some of those areas that we have.
I mean, all I would, just to add to that,
It's
at this
probably-
point is, in terms of capacity, there would be zero capacity from a ground maintenance point of view
Yes.
to take anything.
Yeah, there would have to be a really good reason to do that, I think.
Investment in that.
Yeah, but I think of course, it wouldn't be for this committee either to decide whether that was the right thing to do or not. It would have to go up the strategy and full council, I suspect.
I think for us officers, obviously, the majority of land in Woodley is not owned by us. So obviously to identify parcels of land that are not owned by us, that's quite a large areas of land. And obviously there'll be parts and areas that are well maintained and we have no concern about. If it's specifically areas of land that could benefit from someone taking care of them, as opposed to wild areas that we're quite happy to leave and things, maybe it'd be better if an email is sent out to councillors saying, keep an eye out for those areas of land. You could let us know if you think there are, like the Drovers Way, then we can maybe add that to this and more specifically look at those areas rather than officers go and look at all possible areas of land, because there's so much it would take quite a long time to do. Whereas if councillors have ideas of parcels of land, then that gives us something to go away and have a look at more specifically.
Because, for example, in front of my brother Northwood, my brother's house backs onto the allotments, and in front of his house is a small green of approximately 350 to 400 square metres of lawn. And the kids who live in that little square, they play football and stuff like that. And, the signs that are up there, all over by really big council. And I've never seen a sign or anything up. Recently, I've seen you guys that said, please don't play football. And the parking spaces that form part of it have been redesignated for disabled drivers and stuff like that. So they're always taking an active role in sort of managing those small parcels of land. Now that might be fine because actually there's no benefit for us taking that on, particularly because Reading Borough Council are looking after it. Might be other patches where it does make sense for us to at least have an idea of what they are. I think we'd have to get councillors to suggest that.
I think suggestions of areas of land that you're aware of that might be useful. I think
I'm
would
just
be for us to.
What would be helpful there is as well, ownership aside, if members are concerned about a particular area, whether we're taking it on or not, then we can make representations to the relevant authorities.
That might be a better way of doing it,
about
because I'm a bit worried in case we overstep our remit as those services in terms of use of land and stuff like that. That says if you do see that and you think it's untidy and might be useful for leisure services, maybe let us know.
But we could address concerns from members about specific areas of land in any case.
Okay, thank you. And then on to the last one of these, item 13, which is publicity and website. Does anyone have any suggestions for inclusion or update of our websites? I have a question actually. The Poor Lads charity, do they have a website yet? I'm aware of.
I'm aware of. Right.
I don't sit on that group anymore, but I do talk to them from time to time, and they were heavily involved in setting up a website. We don't yet. No. That's all fine. Okay. I was going to say we should put that on.
What I tried
It's
to
done.
what I tried to do this year is where those outside bodies have websites, I've added a link next to them against the council so that there are links, but yeah, they don't have
They
one
haven't
yet.
come up with one, yeah, okay, fair enough. Right, in that case, I officially close the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending.